Alright, what is going on guys? It's Tazz here, and welcome back to the channel. Now today I've got for you guys is my review for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now before I get into anything, I just want to say that this will be a spoiler-free review, so if you guys have not gone out and seen the movie yet, do not worry, nothing will be spoiled for you in this video, but if you haven't gone and seen the movie yet, I definitely suggest you go see it, because you do not want this one spoiled for you. But without any further ado, let's get into the review. So episode 8 picks up pretty much right where episode 7 left off, and we have a few different storylines going on here in the movie that all eventually end up being in the same place towards the end of the movie, but that's pretty much all I'm gonna say without spoiling anything. But I really did love the story of this movie. I thought it was really great, and really it's honestly very different than any other Star Wars movie. So if you guys were wondering or worrying if it would be sort of like a copy and paste of Empire Strikes Back or something, do not worry about that. The Last Jedi is definitely a very different Star Wars movie than we're used to, and that's really not a bad thing. And while yes, there were a lot of familiar elements in this movie, it did definitely take a lot of risks and take a lot of changes into account in this movie, and it really was sort of a different type of Star Wars movie than we may be used to, and I definitely think it may have been time for this sort of change. And now, I mean, it wasn't a drastic change in the movie, it still felt like a Star Wars movie, but it just had something extra in it. I don't really know what it was, but it just, something about it just felt fresh and new and different. And that was definitely something that I really enjoyed about this movie. And really, without going into any specifics, I guess the best way to describe these changes is really by just taking a line from the trailer where Luke says, "This is not going to go the way you think." And that is definitely a great way to describe this movie. Is a lot of the theories that people had going into this movie, some of them came true, some of them were definitely way off from what actually happened, but it was definitely very hard to predict how this movie was going to go, and it really did not go the way we thought it was going to go, and it was just different in that aspect. I felt that there were so many moments in this movie where you're just watching it and you just see something happen and you're like, wow, I never would have thought that they would have actually ended up doing this in this movie, and it's just something that would have been very hard to predict and something that you really could not have predicted would actually happen. But in addition to this movie just being very unpredictable and very surprising at points, I thought that this movie was also very funny. I mean, I've seen a lot of people talking about this and saying, oh, this is probably the funniest Star Wars movie, and I would most likely have to agree. There were a lot of funny moments in this movie that definitely landed with me and the audience that I was with. Sort of everybody in the theater was just laughing at certain points, and it was great. I mean, there were a lot of jokes in this movie, and I think that they definitely hit very well. And that's something that definitely surprised me about this movie, is I thought that with all of the sort of red symbolism and everything with this movie, and oh, The Last Jedi, it seems like it was going to be such a dark movie, when in reality, it wasn't really as dark as you would have thought, and it was actually a lot more lighthearted, and there were a lot more jokes thrown into this movie than you might have originally thought. And yes, there were a lot of funny moments in this movie, but it definitely knew when to shift tones into more of a serious tone or even a darker tone for the movie, and that was just something that I thought was done very well, was sort of the tonal change throughout the entirety of this movie. And you really have to hand it to the director, Rian Johnson, on this one, is because I really thought that he did a great job with this movie. I thought that the directing in this one was just amazing, and I thought he did a great job with all of the scenery, all of the characters, all of the new creatures and everything. I just think that this movie was just amazingly directed, if that's really the way to say it. But I'm definitely really excited to see what Rian Johnson does with his own Star Wars trilogy. If you guys weren't aware, he is actually getting his own separate trilogy. It's not like a numbered trilogy or anything, but it's just his own separate trilogy that's going to be off doing something completely different. But after seeing The Last Jedi, I am definitely super hyped to see him get his own trilogy to sort of direct and go in the direction that he wants it to go in. But backtracking a little bit, I mentioned sort of the scenery and the characters and the creatures and everything. I thought that obviously all of the locations in this movie looked awesome. I mean, anytime you're gonna go see a Star Wars movie, always the locations look amazing. All of the creatures looked amazing. If you guys have seen any of the sort of behind the scenes videos that the Star Wars YouTube channel uploaded, you saw that a lot of the creatures in this movie were a mix of sort of practical effects as well as CGI. So a lot of these things, they actually had physical, like either animatronics or just physical puppets of these things there, and they sort of mixed some CGI in to make them look a little bit cooler. But I just thought all the creatures, all the scenery was absolutely awesome. And one thing that this movie did a lot better than The Force Awakens was, I think, with its characters. And now episode 7 did have a hard job having to introduce so many new characters into an already established universe, but I felt that The Last Jedi did a great job with developing these new characters. I think that we actually sort of got to know these characters a little bit more, had a lot more character development, and actually got a chance to sort of feel for these characters and actually sort of, you know, like get into these characters and sort of, you know, appreciate these characters for who they are and their place inside of the Star Wars universe. And I thought that that was just one really great thing about this movie. And now, speaking of the characters, I think that everybody had such great performances as their respective characters. All of the actors and actresses did an amazing job with this movie. It just definitely sort of brought you into the universe like any other Star Wars movie did. I thought that the acting in this movie was great. I thought that everybody really embodied their characters, and maybe characters that you may not have liked as much in The Force Awakens were definitely redeemed in this movie, and you definitely sort of either felt for them a bit more or definitely just sort of liked their characters a bit more. At least that was how it was for me, is sort of you just sort of got a new appreciation for these characters within this movie. But I mean, as you guys can tell, I pretty much loved everything about this movie, and if I had to pick any negative, I think the only negative about this movie was I wish a certain character got a bit more screen time, and if you guys have seen the movie, I'm sure you know who I'm talking about, but I just wish that this certain character got a little bit more screen time, and I'm really hoping that they get to shine a bit more in the next movie. But I mean, other than that, guys, I really loved pretty much everything about this movie, from the characters to the scenery to the directing to just pretty much everything in this movie. Like I said before, I just loved it, and I'm really not sure where I would rank it among my favorite Star Wars movies. I'd probably say it's in the top 3 or 4, but I'd probably have to go see it again to really give it a solid ranking. But other than that, guys, if you have gone and actually seen this movie, tell me down in the comments what you think about it. Try not to spoil anything for anybody. If you are going to say any spoilers, definitely put a little spoiler warning before you say anything so people know. But I want to know what you think about this movie. If you've gone and seen it, or if you haven't gone and seen it, are you going to go see it soon? I want to know your thoughts down in the comments below. But until next time, guys, it's been Tazz, and I'll see you guys in the next video.